Starfleet Academy, episode 1 and 2. Let's go. I think there might be something wrong with me because I liked it. Now, let me preface this. There's lots I didn't, but let's talk about a few very specific things that I did like. I particularly want to talk about episode 2. Let's get through episode 1 first of all. Episode 1, I did not like. The first 20 minutes is a bit of a slog. I'm not a big fan of the kind of cliched trauma backstory thing. And the character of Caleb I'm finding very annoying, particularly in episode 1. I'm going to put that to one side for a second because I actually think episode 2 should have been episode 1. Episode 1 was a bit of a mess, to say the least. It was all over the place. There was a lot of character introductions, but they did something very clever. And I'm going to give props and I'm going to give kudos where it belongs. I don't think it deserves the amount of hate that it's getting online. Now, I was fully prepared to come on here and absolutely slate this television show. We're only going to get, I think, 2 seasons, all right? This television show and the end of Strange New Worlds is pretty much, in my opinion, going to wrap up New Trek. And for a lot of people, they'll be pleased about that because it's been a bit of a clusterfuck, to say the least, okay? And nobody's happy about the direction it's going and whatever. But I'm going to take this as just a show and tell you how I felt about the whole thing after 2 episodes. And we're only 2 episodes in. We have 20 minutes of a backstory telling the usual tragic life story of a kid called Caleb whose mother's taken away, ends up as a kind of a fugitive type of scenario, kind of like Burnham did in season 1 of Discovery. So I was very much like, blah, 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 don't care. I initially thought I was going to like the character of Noose Bracca, played by Paul Giamatti, but I don't. He's very cartoonish, and you can tell how interested you are in a show or an episode based on the little things you start picking out. And all I kept thinking of when he was on screen was, why has he got X's and O's on his head? He has X's and O's on his head. Why does he have X's and O's on his head? And that's all I could focus on was the X's and O's in his head. And that's because I was bored. I don't think they need an enemy at this point. And the Caleb mother storyline is just, I don't care. I was lukewarm towards the quirks of Captain Naya Ake, played by Holly Hunter. But by episode 2, I kind of like it. I kind of like her as a character. I like the way she's snuggling up on the captain's chair, and I shouldn't. This is why I think there's something possibly going on in my brain. I kind of like the fact that she's snuggled up on the captain's chair and lounging on it and reading books, and she doesn't wear shoes to meetings, and, you know, she's got this weird, quirky energy, but when it comes down to the crunch, her command style isn't that bad, you know? When she needs to kick a bit of ass, she does, and I kind of like her as a character. But what I find interesting is the characters, aside from Caleb, I think are far more interesting to me than Caleb himself. Now, you'll have to forgive me because I haven't learnt all their names just yet. So I thought it was pretty cool the way the character of Darren, played by George Hawkins, turns into a blueberry and he's able to walk outside in the ship for 8 minutes without needing air. But one particular thing stood out to me in episode 1, and that was the Doctor. What they've done with the Doctor, who's a fairly big legacy character, I think is pretty clever. He's just there. They haven't explained what he's doing there, or they haven't given him this big, ta-da, it's the Doctor from Voyager. He's just there. They introduce him with a quick snapshot, and he's just diagnosing the crew for various things. They give him a little light intro, one line that's a blast from his first episode in Voyager. They gave him a slight interesting character quirk, which shows how experienced he is in extreme emergency situations. Like, you have to remember the Doctor survived 7 years of just being activated, learning he's sentient, going through insane scenarios in Voyager. And there's one particular moment where another one of the cadets called, I still don't know their names, Genesis, played by Bella Shepherd, is trying to rescue the Blueberry guy, who is Darum, and she needs to activate the tractor beam on board the top of the ship to rescue him from being lost in space. She can't activate the tractor beam because she doesn't have command codes, right? So she calls an emergency and up pops the Doctor. The Doctor tells her that this isn't an emergency. And she says, look, I need the command codes to get access to the tractor beam because Blueberry guy is stuck out there on the ship. The Doctor doesn't question it for a second. He immediately snaps into, no problem, boom, here's the command codes, go get him. I thought that was a lovely little tiny bit of character development for the Doctor, because he's seen this a million times before. Broke the rules, gave her the command codes, and then went, go get him. And I thought that was a clever little aspect of showing the Doctor has seen things like this and just acted instinctively. And then episode 2 came along and went, okay, come on. We're all doing this, so let's do it. And I loved episode 2. I'm a bit of a sucker for romance, but I thought it was really old school Star Trek storytelling, and the negotiating Beta Z rejoining the Federation. And I actually found that debate, that negotiation, really interesting. And it kind of came to the core of what the Federation was all about, which was political negotiation between two planets and all the things that they wanted. And episode 2 got me early on because I'm a massive fan of Prodigy. I thought that was a great show. And I literally, like a 10-year-old, pointed at the screen and went, that's Rock Tech! When we first saw our live action representation of Rock Tech. Is it Rock Tech? Rock Tech. One of the characters from Prodigy. And I thought it was really cool. And there was an exocomp. So I pointed at the screen and went, Rock Tech! And then pointed at the screen and went, that's an exocomp! But I thought it was really, really decent storytelling. It was entertaining. Okay, it was nothing new. It was nothing deep or, but I thought it was very Star Trek. It was a nice story. Caleb didn't annoy me that much. It seemed to settle into its rhythm a little bit better. I liked it. I liked episode 2 a lot. But the standout for me was the Beta Z character called Terima, played by an actress called Zoe Steiner, who I think is a standout in the show. Really good actress, and I found the dynamic between her and Caleb really interesting to watch. I thought it was natural. I thought it was written well. I thought the dialogue was great. I thought the story was great. The little nod to the pregnant whales, and I really liked it. Is there something wrong with me? Let's talk about the ship for a little bit. Now, I gave Discovery a lot of shit for their detachable nacelle nonsense. I was questioning halfway through, why is the Star Trek logo on top of the ship? This makes no sense. And then I went, okay, it's not a ship, it's a building. And then I was watching the ship flying along and then docking at Earth, releasing its nacelles so that it could transform into a building for Starfleet Academy. And okay, that kind of makes sense. The design of it didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. The backstory with Caleb and the mother, I don't care about. I couldn't give a shit. I hope they drop it. They probably won't. I quite like the character of the hologram character of Sam. So yeah, look, it's got lots of elements of New Trek Discovery. I don't dislike it as much as Discovery. We're only 2 episodes in. I think the Betazoid character is a massive standout for me. And it's fun and light, and it didn't anger me at the end of it. Overall, if you disregard episode 1 and if you just start with episode 2, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. Now, I don't know where this show is going. We're only 2 in. I kind of liked it. Overall, I'm enjoying it. I don't know what to tell you.